Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
I've given a brief introduction into your background. So how did you get into leadership?
Okay, the story starts from my corporate life where I had a fair share. As you mentioned before, it was about 15 years I was in the banking sector, dealing with people from around the globe, from senior management positions. And it was a great experience with hands-on leadership, but at the same time, it was a sweet and bitter taste, let's say. On the one hand, I enjoyed success, and on the same time, I would see other successful executives in their professional lives with disasters in their personal lives. And I didn't like it at all. Well, I had my fair share of leadership there, but it wasn't the type of leadership that I really enjoyed.
So they were successful in their businesses and doing really well there, but then in their personal lives, they had some real problems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's quite interesting you say that because a lot of people that I work with, executives and leaders and that, and then entrepreneurs as well, they're working some long hours. They're overwhelmed. As in my introductions, talk about going from email to email, meeting to meeting. They have a lot going on for them. And then they're trying to go home and try and be mum, dad, husband, wife, partner, brother, sister. And it's really hard for them. So when you saw that, well, what was some of the outcomes would have been great at all, but what could people do around that space?
The issue is that they behave like split personalities. So they are a different person at work and a different person at life. And this brings internal conflict. And this is where everything starts. So for me, my new approach to leadership, let's say, when I quit my job, and I quit my job because really that it stopped inspiring me. It didn't fire any passion inside of me because of this. And I went back home and I thought that staying with my family, which I miss so much, working long hours would be the solution and the perfect space for me. But still something didn't look right. Something was missing. So that was when I started approaching leadership from a totally different angle, a new point of view, which is exactly that the person behind the leader and inside the leader rather, and the person at home is the same human being. So leadership is about the same human being, and this is where the focus goes. And I would suggest that the solution is to look inside. This is my whole approach, and this is why I say about inspired 360 success, because 360 is how to combine all the areas of your life in harmony, being the same authentic person.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. So the 360 degree, I get what you're saying. That's really important. And when you said before that you quit your job because you lost your passion to it, it just didn't feel right. How long was it that you were feeling like that before you actually quit your job?
Actually, it was about 12 months, a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Some people I work with as well, again, that it's a year, 18 months, 2 years. They just know that it doesn't feel right anymore. They just lose that energy, that passion, as you said. The skip in their step is no longer there. But it takes them a while for them to make that decision to transition out of there, which is really interesting.
It's always having solution as well. I was quite lucky because I could step out and wait and see and search inside and find the next best step for me. But you don't always have this opportunity. So I understand that.
Yeah, so everybody's situation is different, as you said. Yeah, for sure. Hey, tell me, so I'm going to ask you a question here. Now, this can be somebody who's alive or from history. So who's your favorite leader and why?
Okay, now, there's so many great leaders, right? And I'm sure that most people tell you that they struggle to find one name and tell you who that is. Same as for me, but for me, it's a totally different approach. For me, it's not about a name. It's rather a type of person. For me, it's everyday people, the next door leaders, as I say. It could be someone in an office, a shop, a mom, a teenager, a CEO. Actually, anyone who brings inspiration and transformation, who serves, unites, values, and models for others. These are my favorite ones. So these are the ones that create positive change and positive impact in our world. And it's a type of person. It's not one name.
Yeah, excellent. A type of person. I like what you said, the next door leader. Yeah, I love that terminology. I don't know about you, Joanna, but I actually feel like wanting to break out and speak to you in Greek. But of course, our listeners are all around the world, so we're having to stay here with English and that. But so Joanna is also known as Joanna, is the name in Greek as well. So Joanna, I love what you just shared about. It's not an actual name, but it's the type of person. And it's the becoming a leader of that type of person, which I think is really quite important. Because as you said earlier on, that you can be one person at home, at work, and one person at home, where it should be the same person, but also you need to be authentic. And I think what you're sharing there is about the next door leader is somebody who is being authentic as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, the name of the show is Leadership is Changing. When I say that name, what does that mean for you?
Okay, I'm known about playing with words. So leadership is actually the act of leading, okay, of showing the way. But who really acts? Who leads? It's a human being again. I always go around that. It's a human being. So for me, it's about leaders who are human beings who are changing. And that's leadership changing. And it's all about internal, inner change from the inside out. Or I would say even further, inspired change. Because you see, Dennis, what I love about it is that we are SIP, SIP. We are spiritual beings gifted with an intellect, living in a physical body. And because we're gifted with this intellect, we have the ability to respond rather than react as all other breathing beings. So leadership change is about leaders becoming aware of their ability not only to adapt to change, but to respond to change too. It's about leaders transforming into new becomings and then into their new doings, which is their results. I don't know if this sounds quite radical to you, but for me, it's about creating their own new normal rather than living and being challenged of the new normal.
This is some fantastic stuff that Joanna is sharing with us, listeners. The internal and the change, which is really great. And the thing here is the SIP, the spiritual, the intellect, the physical body. But then you're talking about adapt, respond, transforming, doing, and creating their own new normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So creating your own new normal. Because the word normal today is, well, what is the new normal? I mean, what does it mean? Because we have, and every country is different, but every country is the same, whereby we've got human beings in there and we've had to go into lockdowns to protect ourselves and so forth. So when you say new normal, what do you mean by new normal?
Okay, what I'm saying is about creating what serves you, your vision, your purpose, something that you can control, because what's happening now is that we have been attacked by forced external change, which is something we cannot control. It is out of us. And it's happening nearly for a year now. The only thing we can do is to turn inside and see what we can control. And because we are creative human beings, and under certain circumstances and with certain methods, we can unleash this creativity, because now this is blocked because of the shock. We can actually create what our vision is, which is our new reality, our new normal.
Okay. So we can create the vision. Yep. Can I say that last piece again? Create the vision.
Create the new vision, which will be our new reality, which will be our new normal.
Yeah. Okay, create a vision, which will be our new normal, which will be our new reality. Yeah. Well, be our new reality, which will be our new normal. Yeah, very good. Barbara, a big welcome to you to the show.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It is great to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, wonderful. So you're in the US right now, and your seasons and my season are a little bit different from different parts of the world. We're in summer, and so I'm sitting here a little bit sweating a little bit, and you are in winter. Is that right?
Yes, I'm slightly jealous, Dennis, just because it is cold. It's a little dreary and rainy today. I'd much rather be in warm temperatures in my kayak.
Yeah, fair. Oh, yeah, true. The kayak. Yeah. Hey, so I've done an introduction about you. Is there anything else around your background that'd be quite interesting to our listeners? Anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I'm a native Virginian. I'm about an hour south of DC. I'm originally from Norfolk area and Hampton Roads area, so I've always been in this area. But one of the things I love is the four seasons that we have. But my
Mm.
background, I wasn't expecting it to go this way. But in my early 20s, I became a financial analyst for an amazing boss who ended up becoming my father-in-law. And I was a government contractor in DC. I did that crazy commute. Literally, I was about 3 hours on the road every day, and I supported the Navy and then later on the Marine Corps. And I did it on the foreign military sales program. So, and this is, think of it as a different kind of financial position. It's not like crunching numbers all the time, what we think is finance or banking, but it was more liquidating unused funds from really old and dusty contracts that were in warehouses. So they could turn around and use them for other projects. And I was also responsible for making sure items on the programs that were ordered got to their destination and the contract correctly closed. So that's a little bit about my background.
Excellent. You got some rescue dogs. How many do you have?
Yeah, so I have 2 lab rescues. They're spoiled. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
last year I rescued a horse. He's amazing. I've always wanted a horse and never thought I would actually have one, but he's been my therapy horse during COVID.
That's excellent, Barbara. And tell me, so how did you get into leadership?
Yes, it was unexpected. And when it happened, I had taken a year off my current role to homeschool my youngest son. He had been struggling at school. We had tried just about everything. We tried public school, private school, and it was a situation. He was highly intelligent, but for some reason he had a learning gap. So I opted to teach him at home. And honestly, it was the first time I had been out of that long DC commute. And I started to take a long, hard look at my life. And I asked myself if I wanted to go back to what I was doing. And it was a great paycheck, but it was not internally fulfilling for me. And one of my values, it's ironic because one of my values is peace. And one of the programs I was working for was a missile program. So tell me if that isn't misaligned or not. So I opted not to go back to my current position. It was probably the scariest step I had ever taken. But I always wondered if there was something more to life. And about that time, my husband had joined a leadership development organization to grow his own leadership. And I just decided to be part of it, mostly because he was meeting some pretty awesome people. In fact, that's where I met you, Dennis. And I decided until I figured out a new path, I would focus on developing my leadership and communication skills. And I fell in love with coaching and realized I was already using those skills and I naturally love to listen and ask questions. So it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, it was great. I think, I don't know, it's probably what, 8, 9 years ago is when we met?
Yes, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Barbara, so this person can be alive or from history. And the question here is, who's your favorite leader and why?
Yeah. So there's many people that I admire out there, and we could probably spend a couple hours talking. But I have to say, in recent years, it's been Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a brain specialist and a double board psychologist. And I think of him as a maverick in his field because he doesn't just view brain health as physical, but as part of everything we do, to the point where his lens is brains run the world. They run the stock market, businesses, churches, government. And if our brain is healthy and working right, we're likely to be successful. And if it's not working as well, it impacts our decisions, our focus, our relationship, judgment, and character. So he's on this mission to create a brain health revolution to empower leaders so they can have greater success. And I was struggling in the areas of focus and attention, and he ended up impacting my brain. And so I was able to experience that at a personal level so I can do my own stuff greater.
Yeah, and that's why you're now an Amin Clinic brain health coach. Is that right?
Yes, I decided to tie in the personal development, leadership, and brain health because there's so many things that we can do that are brain based to make our life and our work a little bit easier.
Yeah, excellent. You and my partner Mary should get together and have a good chat because she's been doing a master's in neuroscience and she's known as the neuro change coach. And yeah, definitely for you two to catch up for sure. So, yeah, great. Yeah, that's a great example of somebody who's the brain runs the world. I like that. That's fantastic. Hey, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. And when I say that statement or the title of the show, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's such an important topic anytime, especially now. I feel like for me, that means that I need to be in tune with what is changing. And not only what is changing, but how am I going to respond to those changes? Because if I wait and do nothing, I'm not meeting the need and demand out there. There's a term I've been hearing more often, and it's called cognitive flexibility. And it's the ability to be flexible to the change, what you're thinking about, how you're thinking about it, and even what you think about it. In other words, it's the ability to change your mind, but also your approaches. And cognitive flexibility is required in many ways throughout the workday and in leadership.
Yep. Okay, so it's really important. The brain is so powerful, and then the brain is also so important in the sense that we as leaders, we've all got brains, and so we need to use them, but also understand where we're at with things at times. And I like what you say there in relation to actually the way that we respond to change and the way we do it. Because Barbara, what I talk about is that there is a lot of things that are happening in change and it's out of our control. But there are two things that are in our control. One is our attitude and the way we react to it. So that's what you're talking about. And number two would be where we are going next. And I think they're really important things for us to talk about. So I really like what you just shared there.
Yes, and what they found is leaders who do exhibit this cognitive flexibility strength, they can handle those transitions more easily. Not that they're easy, but they can move through them. They can shift between tasks a little bit more in stride and apply learning in one area for greater problem solving.
And would they also be able to, there's that word out there, adapt, pivot, whatever you want to call it. Are they able to do that quicker than others?
Yes, and they have a different view. And so they can apply this to decision making and as well as communication within a team, but also transfer those skills and help them become more aware of how to be more flexible.
Now, the question I've got for you, this person can be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
Yeah, I've actually thought long about this because I've heard you ask the question to other interviewees. And my best example is I don't have one person. I'm a lover of history. And there are some great lessons in history. But I think that there are different people that can teach us different things. And before I was thinking, I got a chance to meet Jack Welch, the former GE CEO, on all those books, and he really inspired, but he's not the one person. Through school, I had to learn my art of war, right? But he's not the one person. I think when you look at your career in leadership, it's important to identify who can teach you certain lessons. And I went to a cadet school, right? So everything was a bit formal, brass and polished by the numbers. And some of the generals that you study, whether they are ancient or modern history, has adaptation to lessons in leadership, right? My school was also a Catholic school, so I was always fascinated, believe it or not, by the Bible. And I'm not a strict religious person, but from a leadership perspective, here is a book that has suffered the ages and the torments of man, but has still convinced a mass population into an esoteric deity that we should succumb to, laws, principles, and so forth. So I think virtues of leadership and examples of leadership can be found in everyday life, from early schooling through to, I don't know, something more formal that you do in your life. There's not one person, but I know that Jack got me to look at business differently. I know some of my professors from back in the days in Boston have got me to look at myself differently, right? But the one thing I take away, and it was really Michael Potter from school some time back now, was if you want to lead, people need to believe in you. When they stop believing in you is when they stop following. And so that being authentic, as in being an authentic leader, probably is the most deepest and most meaningful learning I have had through my entire career.
Nice. Now, if I was to say to you, one of those generals or Jesus or somebody you were sitting on a park bench with, having a coffee, what would be one question you want to ask them?
It would be very interesting, especially someone from a more ancient history, to have them look at me, to have them look at the company I've adapted today, and in their eyes, without all this modern technology that we use to enhance life, ask them a question: what am I doing wrong?
Oh, very good.
Right?
Yeah, that'd be cool, huh?
Do you know, it's that old paradigm, sometime a fresh set of eyes
Yes.
can give a very honest outcome. And the problem we have, especially look at it this way, from what we've spoken about, we're talking about a repetitiveness of selling a message and authentic. It's not uncommon from a behavioral aspect for us to get caught up in our own narrative. And it's sometimes that fresh set of eyes. And in my case, it might be my wife look at me going, what the hell are you saying? What are you? That stop that check that you need to do. And that can be more valuable than anything else.
Yep. I agree. And when I used to travel the world and doing a lot of these events, and even if I do the events today because of the pandemic, we're not being able to travel much, but doing events, when I do these events, some of them could be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, depending what it is, but I'm on a high. And then I used to travel back to New Zealand from overseas and so forth and come home. But then the family would actually bring me back to reality and do that little bit of a check-in with me just to say, hey, what's going on here? And you're so right. I think sometimes we do get caught up in our own narrative about things. And if you can get different perspectives, it is the best thing you can do, because really, when you're out there doing things, and whether it's in a medical industry or whatever it is, and you're out there selling something or you're trying to sell the vision, if you're stuck in your own narrative, then you're probably missing the mark, or you're not listening to what the market's wanting or what your team might be wanting. And it's a big thing for you to do. So I'm glad you talked about that.
Yeah, let's just phrase that as a reality check. And there's probably more meaning in those two words than we realize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, the show's called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does that mean for you?
I think we're right now in probably the best example of what that statement means. From a world perspective, we've gone through near 2 years of COVID. And I don't want to turn this into a COVID conversation, but if you follow news, it's doom, gloom, death, and despair everywhere, right? Let's just call it what it is. And when we're looking at staff, we're being protective about staff. We've been concerned about their welfare, right? And COVID has brought in a lot of challenges from business, from supply chain, R&D projects getting blown out and so forth. A number of companies decided to hanker down and weather the storm. It doesn't matter whatever. But where we are right now, I think we're all coming to the realization that whatever COVID is, it's here and it's going to stay. And as leaders, we need to evolve. We need to evolve our staff. And as businesses, we need to move ahead with this new macro hanging over us. So here at MedLab, part of our step change is surviving with COVID, knowing that we could wake up tomorrow and there could be restrictions. Maybe we can travel, maybe we can't. But the idea is to park that off and say, that's no longer an excuse. So how do we get that agility back into the company? And how do we forge ahead doing what we are entrusted to do? So when I look at leadership changing, we are actually going through an evolution in MedLab now where we're redoing everyone's KPIs. And the KPIs are about aggressively stepping forward in lighting. And it doesn't matter what the world throws at us. We go back to a mantra that we had pre-COVID, which is everything's okay if our house is in order. Right? So programs are on path. We're developing our staff and we are all working as one. From our perspective, to survive through COVID, MedLab had to divide into certain silos just to get jobs done. It's now time to kick out the silos. So I'm leading a step change in the organization that's a lot more aggressive. We just had up into Christmas, global patents get approved for a wonderful delivery platform we have. So I'm on the commercial teams. Doesn't matter. You can travel, you can't travel. Europe's open, US is opened, it's closed the next day. You need to commercialize, right? And this in part is their belief in me that I'm going to do the right thing by them. I'm not going to expose them to undue risk. There's that health side, physical and mental. But at the same time, it's tuning that company up to accelerate in discussions it's had, how it treats those discussions and moving forward. And it's a big sell process. Yesterday, for 4.5 hours, I was on video conference back to Sydney, addressing team members at a 1-to-1 interval. The younger guys have a little bit more concern. The older guys had different concern. But it was important at that stage to get down to a you and me conversation, right, on how we move it forward. So the sell position is, at this point, really big. And that sell position doesn't work unless your staff believe in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. And I like what you say. Everything is okay if our house is in order. Is that's the right way of saying it? Yeah.
It is a mantra that we have.
And I think it's the same thing that I think for a lot of our listeners, it's their organizations, their businesses, they should be thinking about that, but also them personally. They should be thinking about them, that everything's going to be okay if their house is in order. In other words, and I call the house probably for the individuals between the areas, right? Their attitude, their mindset and so forth. If everything's fine there, that's good. Health-wise, if they're physically, mentally and emotionally fit, that's good too. Because sure, and I've seen a lot of people over the last sort of 6 months, even a year, are really tired. And a lot of it's been the lockdown. But I think a lot of it hasn't been the fact that we've been stuck at home only. It's been that doom and gloom and that fear that's been pushed into a lot of people. And all I can say to listeners is stop watching the news.
Yeah.
Yep. It's probably one of the best things I have done, right? And so is not watching the news, but also on my social media feeds, I've stopped all news feeds for months or even over a year. And it's been the best thing I've done. And I think it's really important to make sure that we've got the right things going in between our ears for us to help us as well.
That's right. We've got to get back to positivity.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get it if you follow Instagram and follow the nightly news.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of positive things that companies do, both in staff development, culturally, and in products and services they promote. Right? We go back to why are we here? And again, there's this reality check that clocks back in.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.